A lone child lies in his bed in fitful slumber. He is a stranger in his own home, a mystery to those around him. What's even more so, he's a stranger in mystery unto himself. Some look down upon him and treat him like the outsider he is, while there are others who herald him as the savior of Hyrule, and believe a great journey lies before him. The child, the orphan that I speak of, may be unaware of his destiny, but his pure heart and courageous spirit will answer its call. His name is Link, and he is the Princess Zelda's champion. Hello everyone, I hope y'all are doing well. I'm Lord Pog and welcome to Lord Pog Gaming. Today we're going to be looking at The Legend of Zelda, The Ocarina of Time. Not so much the game as much as Link himself. Because it's in my opinion, out of all the Zelda games, it's arguable he is the most heroic. At least to me he is. Henceforth the arguable part. And if you don't like that, then you could, before we get to it, let me ask, if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like, share, and subscribe. It's a blessing to me when you all do that. It really is. And if I got you feeling a type of way, go ahead and leave me a comment letting me know if you like this video or not. Or if you don't like it. Any and all constructive criticism is welcome here, folks, let me tell you. It really is a blessing to me, and just let me know if y'all like it or not. But if you're interested in The Legend of Zelda and you're a big fan of Link and all that this lore has to offer, and you've played the Ocarina of Time, or you haven't played the Ocarina of Time and you're just really interested in it, then this is the place for you, and let's get this show on the road. The original Legend of Zelda was first released in 1986 by Nintendo, and became an instant success despite it being way above average on the thinking outside the box curve. Shigeru Miyamoto had wanted to create a game that reminded him of his adventures as a child, sharing his boyhood wonder of exploring outside his hometown of Sonobe in Kyoto. Takashi Tezuka also had a hand in The Legend of Zelda's creation as a director, designer, and writer, and has since played various roles in the subsequent sequels. Both men set out to create a world of wonder and exploration for their young audiences, and as a guy who was alive to see the initial impact, let me tell you, I'm going to tell you, it worked. I remember the feeling of playing this extremely in-depth game that was maze-like in its foundations. For instance, accidentally finding hidden shops that even at a young age I had an unnatural affinity for, like burning things. Yes, I know, I'm crazy. Don't judge me. So when I found out that the candle let me burn stuff, first thing I did was try to burn stuff down. only to be rewarded by that signature jingle, that doo-doo-doo-doo-doo. I didn't do that very well. You know, the signature jingle. Anyways, that signature jingle that we've all come to know as one of the bushes burned down, revealing a hidden area. It wasn't just a game for me as a small child. It was a way of escaping into another world, because I was already a Lord of the Rings freak. Like, I was a fanatic about Lord of the Rings. So to actually get to play in another world in a like high fantasy quest epic, that I was all about that. I got to climb waterfalls, feed monsters bombs and watch them burp themselves to death, explore cemeteries full of living statues, and at one point try to attack an old man that was hidden in one of the dungeons. I think it's the first dungeon if I remember correctly, because like I said, I'm a psycho apparently. Only to find out not only could I not do him harm, but that he would like lay my face to waste with magic fireballs of his own. It's a bad idea. Don't attack him. He's only trying to help you. Don't attack him. Now, because I was so little, I could not beat this game. I mean, I was way little trying to beat this game. So, with the help of my brother and a friend of his down the street, we had a 24-hour grind session. Nope. 24 hours of play time. My brother and his buddy down the road and myself stood victorious of the first Legend of Zelda. It was an epic day, and I'll never forget it. The second installment of The Legend of Zelda, The Adventure of Link, released in 1988 in America. And it didn't fare as well. At least not to me. I didn't really play it. I played it a little bit, and I was kind of put off by the whole new side-scrolling adventure things. It was kind of in the same vein as Castlevania 2 Simon's Quest, and I just kind of feel Nintendo was just a little too ambitious with it, which, I mean, it was ahead of its time. I kind of feel like they were copying Metroid, which was a mind-boggling space opera which followed our lead protagonist Samus Aran around a vast network of caves as she, spoiler alert, she's a woman, as she fights to defeat the evil Mother Brain. Metroid was a breakout hit just like Castlevania and Zelda, and I honestly feel like Nintendo was trying to copy that same sort of juice, that same sort of sauce. Because I guess Castlevania was a side-scroller to begin with, unlike Legend of Zelda, but Simon's Quest and Link's Adventure both started following that same formula of giving us these vast open worlds and like mixing these RPG elements so that we can discover things on our own, which Zelda was always like, but I think the side-scrolling is what really, like, people didn't really like. I mean, I won't say that they didn't like it, because it was a success, a critical success, which was good, because I feel like if it hadn't been, Nintendo would have scrapped Legend of Zelda altogether, but Americans don't really like change, at least ones that are abrupt as much as that, so I don't think it did as well as the first game per se, or at least I don't think people at the time held it in as highest regards as they did the first game. However, The Legend of Zelda 2 did provide a like top-down open world map thing, kind of like Final Fantasy, along with an XP system and Link's magic meter. But what's probably the most important feature is what it introduced and would go on to become a staple in the franchise was it was the first appearance of Dark Link. And I mean Dark Link is felt, and I say felt rather than introduced, because Dark Link is ultimately an important part of the Legend of Zelda series. I did a whole deep dive into the character and why he's so relevant, which you can check out on my channel. I'll leave the card right here just in case that tickles your fancy. In short though, Dark Link is the player's way of facing his dark nature his darker nature, and to become the hero they are destined to be. They must first overcome that. Bum, bum, bum. We wouldn't get another Zelda game until 1992 with The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past, which was released in 91 in Japan and 92 in America. It was for the SNES, Super Nintendo, and did away with the side-scrolling and returned to form with the overhead view. It was the first game to call the Master Sword by name, although in the first game, the sword you get in the graveyard, I swear is the Master Sword. Fight me. No, I'm just kidding. Don't fight. No, stop. And also the Dark World, or Parallel Worlds. Two staples of the franchise ever since, even if the Dark World doesn't always make an appearance. But the most important thing about A Link to the Past, the thing that sets it apart from everything else: Link's pink hair. I've heard arguments that that's not what I'm seeing, or that's not what it's supposed to be, and blah blah blah. In the book, in the game book, he's got like light brown hair or something like that. Stop it. It's pink. Get over it. And it's great, actually. I don't mind the color pink, and I think that sets this Link apart from all the other Links. Now, the first two Links have like light brown hair, and so that kind of sets them apart too, because we're used to the blonde-headed Link. This Link does have pink hair. And I think canonically it's actually supposed to be light brown, so to be fair. However, I cannot state enough that sets this Link apart from all the other Links, save one. There is one Link that I feel is actually set apart from all the other Links, and it's not because of his hair. It's not necessarily because of the way he even looks, really. It's because of his actions. Which brings me to the point of this history lesson about the first 3 Zelda games and the topic of this video. I don't plan on going through every Zelda game because there's still one more to go after A Link to the Past with Link's Awakening. And we could honestly go through the whole Fallen Hero timeline, which I think actually would help present my case, but we're gonna leave well enough alone for now. However, I will say, put a pin in the Fallen Hero timeline, because we will circle back to it in a bit. For now though, we're gonna get to the heart of the matter. The Legend of Zelda, the Ocarina of Time. Released in 1998 in both Japan and America for the Nintendo 64, which I ought to say is a nice change of pace for Japan to release it at the same time as they did America, which you don't see too often back in those days. The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time breathed, no pun intended, new life into the franchise. Going from the top-down perspective into a new third-person view, it was the first Zelda game to become fully 3D animated. While the story isn't as in-depth as what we're used to in 2023, it was, for its most part, flushed out pretty good in detail. Meaning for its day, it was pretty in-depth, really. It was also the first appearance of the antagonist Ganondorf, who is considered by many to be one of the video game's most major BBEGs. The open world aesthetic and what do I do and where do I go vibe are all still present there, and I love it. Playing through Ocarina of Time, the player can just play straight through, save the princess and defeat Ganondorf, or they can take advantage of the open world, which until this entry hadn't even been anything like this, and helping those in need and solving the mini puzzles to acquire helpful items along the way really does benefit the player, but we'll come back to that later. Not to mention the score of this game. I mean, just listen to it. Legend of Zelda has always had some bangers, but the music for Ocarina of Time just hits different. It's a whole vibe unto itself. Not to mention the side characters it introduces. Oh, you're such a failure.
Emotional damage!
Malin the farm girl, Saria the low-key goddess of the forest, the mask maker whose face is absolute nightmare fuel. Why can't I get through one frickin' sentence? Yes, his face is nightmare fuel. the great Deku Tree, who is technically Jesus in tree form, Epona, Link's trusty steed, and most importantly, Navi, the fairy who's Link's trusted friend and companion. I mean, there's tons more characters in this game who each deserve a video of their own, honestly, but we're not gonna take forever here. My point is the Ocarina of Time serves as a turning point for the series. Without it to renew interest in the franchise with its 3D modeling, innovative gameplay for its time, and enriching story, we wouldn't be where we are today in the franchise, with Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. And I mean that. Without this game, you would not have those games, I promise you. So with that said, after making such a bold statement, what in my mind sets this Link, the hero of time, apart from all the others? A game, after all, is only as good as its hero, right? Am I right? Am I right? Why, out of all the Zelda games, does this Link seem to me to be the most heroic? Simply put, because he is.
I mean, it's alright, like...
Fair enough. I know that's not a good enough example, so let me explain. Remember when I said earlier the creator Shigeru Miyamoto had wanted to create a game that allowed the player to feel the sense of wonder he'd felt exploring as a child? In addition to that, he'd never even considered creating a cohesive timeline to the games either, since that wasn't his intended purpose to begin with. What Shigeru hadn't accounted for, and I'm pretty sure I'm butchering that name, so I'm sorry. But what Shigeru hadn't accounted for was audiences by nature need to feel interconnected with their stories. If Lord of the Rings is any indication, people want to feel like they are a part of some grand epic, and The Legend of Zelda was no exception to this. It's like that old expression, right? The exception to the rule isn't the rule. So the game's timeline, or I should say timelines, are a bit wacky. I mean, this game's timeline is wonky as all get out. They are split between several which are called alternative timelines. And I'm not going to go into all that because that's a video all on its own, but I do suggest reading up on it if you haven't. What is important to know is where Ocarina of Time sits in these timelines, and subsequently our boy, the hero of time, Link. There's a timeline called the Early History, placing the Skyward Sword as technically the first game in all the series, followed by the Minish Cap and the Four Swords. But just after those, we get the Ocarina of Time. Everything, and I mean everything moving forward, depends upon the Hero of Time. I cannot stress this enough for you to understand that the Hero of Time's importance in the timeline and The Legend of Zelda is pivotal. Should he succeed, we get the adult and child timelines, but should he fail, we get the fallen hero timeline. Now sadly, and I think this is just opinion, but sadly because I think the timeline we are playing now, the Age of Calamity, takes place at the tail end of the Fallen Hero timeline, the Fallen Hero timeline is the more canonical. But don't quote me on that. Research it, let me know down in the comments if I'm wrong about this. However, the adult and child timelines have plenty of games dedicated to them, so who knows, right? But I think Breath and Tears, if my research is correct, take place after the Hero Fallen timeline, or the Fallen Hero timeline. Again, if I'm wrong, let me know in the comments. Like I said, before the Legend of Zelda timelines they're just wild. The Legend of Zelda timelines are just wild. And again, no pun intended. And they are extremely hard to follow. At least the timelines are hard for me to follow because I'm a freaking moron. Everything about the series as we know it rests upon the Hero of Time and his actions. His willingness to venture out and stop Ganondorf before he can enter the Sacred Realm. It proves to be a lonely endeavor for him. And if it were not for Navi, then Link wouldn't have any true companions save for Epona. Yet even Epona isn't 100% reliable since Ocarina of Time splits the games into two time frames. You start out as a child Link and then you go into like the suspended animation, and when you come out you're adult Link, which only as an adult do you get Epona. It's also important to realize that Link is an orphan, an outcast, since he's not a natural born child of the forest. In fact, the only reason he gets Navi as a companion is because the great Deku Tree commands that she follow and act as a guide for him on his adventure. Now, because it's Nintendo, they don't harp on these more mature themes of loneliness and sacrifice, but what Nintendo has always been masters of is the show don't tell. And if you don't know what show don't tell means, it's being able to convey a feeling or a mood or something that the audience should know or understand is being expressed to them without being directly told that this is the way they should feel or this is what they should take away from it. It's really hard to do, and if you can pull it off, then you've done your story a great service. And that's exactly what Nintendo does. Subconsciously, the player is made to feel like what Link feels the first time they meet him. He's shivering alone in his bed, and we learn that he's an outcast and mistreated for being different. Yet without question, when he's chosen to save Hyrule, the hero of time accepts this without fail. Like I said, this entry into the series is what creates all of the other timelines moving forward. The Link here's mission is, as it were, is probably the most vital in all of the series. So much rests upon the hero of time's shoulders, and he doesn't even know it yet. Neither did we at the time, the players. We had no idea how important this was going to be. And yet, he still does it. Even as a small child, he answers Destiny's call in a selfless act of heroics that only this Link, I feel, could. Friedrich Nietzsche once said, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how." Today we are going to compare from a lot of Nietzsche, and yes, it's pronounced that way. I went to Google Translate, so get ready. We will compare his philosophy to the hero of time. Nietzsche was a German philosopher, often called a nihilist and atheist, to which I'd say the latter is wrong. Though Nietzsche didn't believe in God, the first atheists chose not to believe in him either, though the definition has become muddled over the years. Quick history lesson on the origins of atheism. Here we go. The first atheists didn't say there wasn't a God. They simply chose not to follow him, believing that they shouldn't have to. Both are a little deeper than that, but those are the basics, and I don't really feel Nietzsche 100% fell into either category. Since he did believe in himself, and hence his philosophy tries to encourage a path of self-discovery and morality, so that's not really nihilism. And I truly don't think he didn't think that God exists. I think he just didn't believe that it was necessary to follow a God. I think part of him honestly believed in the possibility of a God. Now with that said, I'm using his writings as a direct contrast and comparison to the hero of time. I'll make no allusion to the fact that I tend not to look to Nietzsche's writings to help guide my own life. I often disagree with him on a lot of things, yet I don't conflict with everything he said either. I think even in the things that I disagree with him in, there are some kernels of truths there that can help me with my own life. And as such, there's kernels of truth in any kind of disagreement that I think people should take in and consider anyways. Because if you have one opinion or one belief, or there is a truth that you think is a truth, then you should listen to the opposite opinion or belief or whatever it may be to at least help reinforce your opinion or your belief. Because I don't even think that's another thing I disagree with. I don't believe that all things are opinions. Not all thought is opinion. I believe that there are truths and falsities, I guess. Truth and false, that's crap. Falsities in this life. On a side note, I've taken personal stock in myself, and I looked inward to try and discover that kind of person I want to be, which one could argue is exactly what Nietzsche encourages in the first place. But I just can't follow him blindly, which is also something he ironically teaches, I think. Moving along, when we first meet Link, he's had a troubled life. His why is almost non-existent, and yet you'd never know it. Again, Nintendo doesn't delve deep into this, but a hint to his personality can be found on his treehouse home, as he's carved fun little doodles onto it. The doodles depicted are of a hero battling a large monster, giving us insight into the mind of child Link. Again, that's a show don't tell. He's berated by this dude Mito, one of the Kokiri, the forest people, for being an outsider and unlike all the other Kokiri children. And plus, Link doesn't have a fairy, which most Kokiri gain at a certain age. Now, this won't be a walkthrough of the game, although there will be spoilers. So if you'd rather play the game now, if you haven't ever played this game, go play the game.
Go away! Read some books!
Now is the time to abandon ship. Go play the game. I'll be here when you get back. If you stuck around, we're gonna move along. I point to these facts to better show just how much of an outcast Link is. How he could harbor a grudge against life as a whole. Yet we don't get that from him. And since he's not the most talkative character, we have to infer from that doodle on his tree. And what we can infer from him is that even at his young age, he's got a high sense of heroics and honor and justice. He's got a deep sense of right and wrong. So when the great Deku Tree, the guardian of the forest, summons him for a great task, Link accepts. Now the game at times gives us multiple choice answers, and if you're a heel, you can reject some of the requests asked of you. But none of that matters. Ultimately, you're going to be pigeonholed into doing the right thing, with the heel's answers being there more as of a joke than like a serious answer. The technology at the time wasn't in like league with games like we have now, like Skyrim. You just couldn't make real in-depth story games with multiple paths, at least not to this degree at this level. Games like Chrono Trigger and things like that you could do that with, but only because of their system and their style. Plus, I would also argue that the heel answers just aren't who Link is. No, the hero of time is the good guy. His why is in the beginning is that it's what helps him bear the how. He is being good for good's sake. A concept I know in today's climate is an intangible as current political honesty. But that's what makes the hero of time so amazing from the start. His why to live is goodness, and that helps him to endure almost anyhow. The rejection that he gets from the other Kokiris, for instance. When the great Deku Tree picks him to save Hyrule, then his why becomes the Princess Zelda and Hyrule as a whole. After that, the how becomes irrelevant to him. All Link knows is he must succeed. So Nietzsche's quote, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how," is his way of explaining that people need to find a reason to persevere. That if they have no reason, then they can if they have the reason, then no matter the obstacle, they can endure. The hero of time is so special because his reason is an ideal in the beginning. Not something we can touch or even see, but something to live by and strive for. Even if it takes our entire lives doing so. Once he is chosen for something greater, his life's goal changes, but because he spent the start of it in service to that something more, he's able to accept it and thus embark upon this incredible adventure. This brings me to my second quote from Friedrich Nietzsche. "No one can construct for you the bridge upon which precisely you must cross the stream of life. No one but yourself alone." Ultimately, the quest to save Hyrule is a lonely one, but you'd never know it with how Link is able to endure it. If not for Navi the fairy, Link would be traversing miles of Hyrule without another soul to keep him company. Along the way, he does meet many NPCs, each with their own personalities and side quests that should he choose to aid in, i.e. the player, then you'll reap the benefits. Yet at the end of the day, it's up to the player, and by proxy, Link, to decide what to do. Does Link help the allergic lady to catch all her cuckoos? Chickens, and I hope that name doesn't get me flagged. Or ignore her because you have greater tasks at hand and And for that matter, why do people gravitate towards Link anyway? Why doesn't he just ignore them and act like he's above the common folk like his last name is Kardashian? Because the option is there to explore who the hero of time is. Remember when I said that the game can be played straight through or can become this long, extensive adventure of discovery through helpful side quests? Well, that's what I mean here. Nietzsche's quote is realized upon how helpful the player determines Link should be, which if he's not helpful at all is going against Link's very nature. There's a reason that every side quest yields good fruit, because it's the game's way of showing the player who they are playing. When Link takes up the mantle of the hero of time and sets out to save Hyrule, he's already begun to construct his bridge upon which he'll cross life's stream. But no one, not even Link, can tell the player how they'll cross it. It's only through Link's example and the player's observance that they see how to construct this bridge. Oftentimes the bridges we construct, we as people, are personal bridges. Not always, but they are. They're built out of self-preservation and at times selfish desire, only open to others if we've deemed them fit to cross. What the hero of time encourages to build is a bridge that is open to everyone and that any and all can cross. One that he'll even aid in its crossing if need be by helping those in their times of need, and in return they may help him with their gifts. In the end, the bridge constructed is either of the player's design or of Link's. Sometimes it's both. Much like in life, we can either cross alone or assist others like a hero would. That which does not kill us makes us stronger. The quest to save Hyrule would be a daunting task even for an adult, but the Ocarina of Time begins with the player starting off as a small child. Besides the quote from Nietzsche here, I can't help but think of the Bible as it puts it, Child Link is being tested like steel, honed into a stronger metal. And no, the Bible doesn't mention Link, but Jeremiah 9:7 says, "Therefore this is what the Lord of armies says, Behold, I will refine them and put them to the test. For what else can I do? Because of the daughter of my people." Now, some translations say melted down like steel and so on, but the context here is what's important. As later on in the game, you do get to play as an adult Link, and a lot of what you do as a child sets up advantages you'll have as an adult. Much like life, the more we are tested in life and the more we rise to these occasions, the more we will benefit from not backing down, just as Child Link did. Henceforth, if it doesn't kill us, then we can learn from it and become better prepared for the future, as Nietzsche was putting it really. Case in point, the direct sequel to the Ocarina of Time is Majora's Mask. It's actually Majora, but growing up Hispanic, I just find it more comfortable pronouncing it that way. So give me 50 feet. Majora's Mask is a game where you play as the hero of time. It is a direct sequel to the Ocarina of Time. You travel to a new land and save it from an awesome looking moon that wants to crush everything into a fine paste, which I assume he wants to use to spread over some Keebler Club crackers to eat. Because club crackers smack. Changed my mind. It's not an adult Link though who saves the day. It's Child Link, and never once does he revert to adult Link. The reason for that is important, even if we don't understand it. and why it just furthers my reason to the hero of time being the bee's knees. Part of it is because through the trials of the Ocarina of Time, he doesn't need to become adult Link, and that if he did wait in suspended animation to fully grow, the land of Termina would have already been slaughtered. No, he doesn't need to do this though, because he's already strong. The confidence that he has in himself is transferred to the player, as it never occurs to us that we can't even become adult Link. We have grown with Link. Our experience in Hyrule didn't defeat us, and as such, just like the hero of time, we have become stronger. The next point I'm going to make is probably the most important. The next quote I'm going to use goes as this: "Whoever fights monsters should see to it that in the process he does not become a monster. And when you look long into an abyss, the abyss also looks into you." Ganondorf is without a doubt one of the most intimidating villains ever in gaming. Partly because the first time he was ever introduced into the series was the Ocarina of Time. Up until then, he was like a pig monster known as Ganon. So Ganondorf is like his Gerudo form. It's like evil made flesh, as it were. And when Link first meets him, he's still a child, which is a psychological trick done to the player. One that I feel carries on to this very day. To be sure, any Souls game, or one like it, it has its larger-than-life bosses who are grotesque. Far more larger and grotesque than Ganondorf. God of War allows the player to slay actual titans. Ooh, better not make that titans. And heck, even Castlevania Lords of Shadows' final boss is the devil himself. Yet Ganondorf strikes just as an imposing figure as any of these, but why? Because the player is put into the mindset of child Link. While all those other games allow us to play adults who've seen things, Link is but a child who's just starting out in life, and that flips a switch in the player's head. Ganondorf at this point is the greater of the two. Not only is he physically stronger, he's also magically adept, a brilliant tactician, and possesses the Triforce of Power. That last part is especially important because when the three goddesses created Hyrule, they created the Triforce. The Triforce was split into three parts: the Triforce of Wisdom, which Princess Zelda possesses, the Triforce of Courage, which went to Link, and the Triforce of Power, which belongs to Ganondorf. Whomever brings all three pieces together can create the world in their image, which is Ganondorf's sole purpose. The fact that he has the Triforce of Power makes him not only smart, magically and martially adept, but powerful also. All this comes to light when Link is still a child, and by extension, these facts embed themselves in the player's psyche. Link, being the possessor of the Triforce of Courage, gives him, and by extension the player, the courage to stand up to such insurmountable odds. But it's because of the cleverly done introduction of Ganondorf that I believe he's found a place amongst the greatest villains in video game history. Now, it might be argued that Nietzsche's quote, "Whoever fights monsters should see to it that in the process he does not become a monster, and when you look long into an abyss, the abyss also looks into you," doesn't really apply here, because if Link is so pure of heart, Doesn't he without question decide to defeat Ganondorf? Well, yes and no, you smarty pants. See, where Link is successful here is the idea that he doesn't have any desire to become like Ganondorf, even though in his attempt to stop him, he himself could make a play for the Triforce. And imagine that if Link would have the ability to create Hyrule in his own image. A Hyrule where he isn't an orphan, where everyone loves and accepts him, where evil like Ganondorf doesn't exist, so he'd never even have to set out alone on such a quest. Zelda, Malon, or Impa, if you're like me, Impa's low-key bae, #Impa's bae, would all love him regardless if he's a hero or not. The great Deku Tree would never die, and so on and so forth. It's the One Ring deception, because even with an intention to do good, ultimate power corrupts ultimately. No one person can argue that they would or could do something that in history has shown to fail better than the people who tried it in the first place. Especially not when the same human conditions of corruption and the like plagues us all. So the hero of time, being the greatest little guy, never contemplates the possibilities cause he's a BA like Samwise Gamgee. Yet he's still plagued, hence the Water Temple and the confrontation with Dark Link. Again, I did a video on this in more detail, so check that out, so I'm gonna gloss over this here. But in short, Link has to overcome his dark nature, or the abyss as Nietzsche put it. And only if he does this can he truly become worthy of his role as the hero of time. By proxy, so does the player, since we are along for the ride. But since it's by far the hardest battle in the game, the accomplishment is so rewarding when we do, and Link overcomes the monsters he's trying to defeat. God is dead. Perhaps the most controversial statement made by Nietzsche, and not one I personally prescribe to. There is, however, an important lesson to be learned in this quote, which in its fullness reads, God is dead, God remains dead, and we have killed him. How shall we comfort ourselves? The murderers of all murderers, what was holiest and mightiest of all, that the world has yet owned, has bled to death under our knives. Who will wipe this blood off of us? What water is there for us to clean ourselves? What festivals of atonement, what sacred games shall we have to invent? Is not the greatness of this deed too great for us? Must we ourselves not become gods simply to appear worthy of it? Remember how I said Nietzsche's whole philosophy couldn't be nihilistic, nor truly atheist? Because he, in the end, believed in humanity, or at least like the inner self? Well, here's the quote, and yet it's a solemn declaration rather than a triumphant one. To put it in regular terms, he was talking about how people were slowly turning away from a higher being, like God, to follow their own paths, meaning they're not using some being as their guiding star for morality, but trying to find that morality in themselves. Regardless if you agree with this ideal or not, that is moot. Since the point of this isn't to debate this, the point I'm making here is this. We've followed Link, the hero of time, on his selfless journey. He's risen to the occasion time and time again, in what some might say a thankless fashion. Yet we've already stated that he's good for good's sake, willing to put the needs of others before him in order to bridge their life's journey, and capable of facing down his own demons for the greater good while turning down ultimate power. It certainly would seem that Link has had to make himself, and once again the player, worthy to achieve such heights. If the Deku Tree hadn't set Link upon this path to begin with, knowing full well that he himself what in the crap, that he himself soon shall perish, then Link might not have ever even come to this realization. Sure, he would have always been good for goodness sake, but that doesn't necessarily mean that he would have risen to the occasion of becoming the hero of time. It's through this selfless act of the Great Deku Tree that Link first gets a glimpse of what self-sacrifice looks like, that higher purpose of good. Point I'm making is that should we all just start becoming followers of God? No. To me, that's a personal choice, and it's not one that anyone should take lightly, nor should they be judged about. And should a person who chooses not to look at God as the ultimate standard of morality, should they be berated by those who do? No. Again, that doesn't help anything. If the Bible had Jesus going to the sinners, and Nietzsche's whole philosophy was like how Shakespeare put it, to thine own self be true, then what benefit is there in an argument? Nor am I saying a religion of Link or the Deku Tree needs to happen, because that's freaking weird, and if you thought that's what we should do, then you're freaking... Instead, what I'm suggesting is that we learn through these lessons shown here by the hero of time. Life is full of lessons, and his is no different, not really. While I, myself, can't wholeheartedly agree with Nietzsche on most of what he talks about, including this, I do believe that whether it's God or something else, develop a higher sense of morality, or at least a higher sense of good. Call it what you will. Develop those truths of right and wrong, because there are truths in this world, and not just opinions. Another thing I disagree with Nietzsche about. Develop a strong sense of justice and morality. That's what Link in the Hero of Time has. That's what all the Links have had. So develop for yourself a higher sense of purpose, a greater justice, as it were. See, Link is good for good's sake, and once he meets the Great Deku and sees his self-sacrifice, it only increases that in him. Though this higher ideal that he holds may never be achievable, and it may be something he spends the rest of his life working towards, it doesn't hold him back. See, something I can agree with Nietzsche on is that people can find morality within themselves. I believe personally that people are generally good and want to do good.
What were you trying to prove? That deep down, everyone's as ugly as you. You're alone.
We have laws made by man that are based upon that sense of morality that nobody even had to teach us. We just developed it on our own. Somehow we just know that this is right and this is wrong. The other thing that I agree with is by Jordan Peterson. And he says that the problem is that we're just not very good at developing that morality at times. That at times we can want something that is bad for us, so we convince our moral nature that this thing is good, even when it is not. And the problem with this higher understanding of good and evil, and being good for good's sake, is that sometimes there could be a personal sacrifice involved in it. Case in point, at the end of Legend of Zelda, after Ganondorf is defeated and Hyrule is saved, Navi, Link's only companion, the only person who has been his true friend through the entire thing. And maybe that's a stretch. Maybe she's not his only true friend, but she is his only companion. And she was the first real companion he ever had. Ends up having to depart from him, and it is a sad moment. So what is good, and what is the point of good for good's sake then? Can we honestly say if the hero of time knew that this would be the outcome, would he have done things differently, maybe rejected the Great Deku? If you said yes to this, then I present this to you. The only reason the Great Deku sends Navi is because Link agrees to go on this adventure in the first place. It is a catch-22. In order for Link to know true companionship, he had to be willing to sacrifice it. In summation, the hero of time accepts this, and like stated in the beginning of this video, the Ocarina of Time is a game which determines the outcome of the timelines. Even the first 3 games are technically set after these events, falling under the Fallen Hero timeline. So much of what this particular Link does will greatly impact the rest of the series moving forward. That's why, to me, I call him the greatest Link, because he was the first to truly allow us to feel what he felt, to show us what a hero can be, and the example laid down. He is the template of what a hero is. He is good, courageous, not selfish, thinks of others first, and although their life might be full of sacrifice, they wouldn't do it differently. They'd do it all again if it meant their world is a better place. He not only believes in himself, but he believes in the purposes set before him by things like the Great Deku Tree. He listens to the advice of Navi. He cares for Princess Zelda. He goes around helping the commoners like Malin and such. He truly is the greatest hero in all of the Legend of Zelda series. I want to thank y'all for listening and watching this. I know this video was long, so if you made it this far, thank you so much. I'm going to start doing these longer videos and taking my time with them because I'm looking to do quality over quantity. That's important to me. If I got you feeling a type of way though, please like, share, and subscribe, and leave a comment letting me know how I did. If I could, I would do this full time, and maybe one day, who knows. But I'm gonna work to get better and bring better videos to y'all, so y'all deserve it. You're a blessing to me, and I mean that. I want you to know that I didn't make this video to preach at you, but I myself am trying to strive for a higher ideal, and I believe that if we all do, our world will become a better place. So, I mean, you know, it's just my way of giving back. That's my whole purpose behind this, honestly. I also want to give a special shout out to Major Link's channel. What he's done there is fantastic and really puts into perspective what I'm talking about here, like what I'm saying. His web series, A Hero's Purpose, follows the hero of time, and it's just an outstanding little thing, man. I mean, it has spoilers in it as well, so if you haven't played the game and you don't feel like knowing what the Ocarina of Time, like how that story really pans out, then I don't suggest you watch it, but I mean, I do suggest you watch it. Just go ahead and watch it. It's wonderful. It's the aftermath of the Ocarina of Time, and it's so splendid. I'll leave a link for that again. Like I said, I'll leave a link, no pun intended, but I'll leave a link for that below in the description. And just thank y'all so much. You guys are a blessing to me, and y'all come back now.